dark where secrets fall.
Hello and welcome back to Sleepy Horror Tales. Tonight, we invite you to find a comfortable spot. Perhaps turn down the lights and let the darkness settle in. Our story takes us to a place weathered by time and neglect. An old clinic hunched at the edge of town, breathing decay and secrets. It's a place where the past refuses to stay buried and a palpable coldness lingers, far deeper than any draft. Prepare yourself for the chill of the forgotten. The old clinic stood hunched at the edge of town, a relic swallowed by creeping vines and the shadows of overgrown trees. Its paint peeled like sunburned skin, the wood beneath warped and grayed by decades of neglect. It was less a place of healing and more a monument to forgotten ailments and dwindling funds in a town that time seemed to be deliberately overlooking. This was where Michael found himself on his first day, the scent of damp decay and antiseptic clinging stubbornly to the humid air. He hadn't wanted this assignment. Fresh out of medical training, Michael had envisioned the fast pace of a city hospital, the cutting edge of medicine, the kind of salary that could finally lift his mother, Helen, out of the constant worry that had etched itself onto her face since his father's early death. Instead, he'd been dispatched to this rural backwater, the very region he'd grown up eager to escape. The clinic felt less like a workplace and more like a sentence. The crumbling walls, the sparse, outdated equipment, the profound silence broken only by the drone of insects outside. It all screamed neglect. Locals, weathered and weary, preferred home remedies or grueling trips to distant, better-equipped facilities. The clinic mostly sat empty, gathering dust and a peculiar, heavy stillness. There was a palpable lack of life, an emptiness that felt deeper than mere quiet. It felt receptive. He kicked lightly at a loose floorboard near the entrance, the sound echoing unnervingly in the main waiting area. A wave of resentment washed over him. Why here? Why him? Hey, don't look so down. Michael turned. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the bright morning sun, was a young woman about his age, radiating an energy that felt alien in the somber place. She had a bright, open face and carried a backpack slung over one shoulder. "It's not the end of the world, you know," she continued, stepping inside and offering a hand. "I'm Sarah. Just got transferred here too. Looks like we're partners in crime or, well, partners in rural health care." Michael managed a weak smile and shook her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. "Michael, nice to meet you. Sorry, just wasn't expecting this. Tell me about it," Sarah laughed, glancing around the dilapidated room. "It's definitely seen better days. But hey, it's our place now, right? Our little corner of the world to fix up. Besides," she nudged him playfully, "it's your hometown turf, isn't it? You should be proud. I'm the real outsider here, but I'm trying to see the silver lining. Fate brought us here, Michael. Might as well make the best of it. Plus, meeting you, definitely a perk." Her infectious optimism was hard to resist. Michael felt a sliver of his gloom dissipate. "Yeah, you're right. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, let's try and make this place better." They spent the rest of the morning attempting just that. Armed with brooms, mops, and the shared sense of reluctant duty, they attacked the layers of dust and grime. They aired out the stuffy examination rooms, organized the meager supplies, and tried to ignore the faint, persistent smell of mildew. A few patients trickled in, an elderly farmer with an aching back, a child with a scraped knee from falling out of a tree. Minor complaints easily handled. Then came the strange woman. She appeared suddenly in the doorway, her presence jarring. Her face was smudged with what looked like soot. Her clothes were ragged, and her eyes darted around with an unnerving intensity. She didn't look physically ill, yet she shuffled towards them, a frantic energy buzzing around her. "Got anything for the craziness?" she asked, her voice raspy, punctuated by a short, sharp laugh that held no humor. Something to make the noise stop. Before Michael or Sarah could properly respond, she laughed again, a hollow sound, and scurried back out the door, disappearing as quickly as she'd arrived. Michael and Sarah exchanged bewildered glances. "Okay, that was weird," Sarah murmured. Later, during a lull, they asked one of the elderly patients, Mrs. Gable, who stopped by for her blood pressure check, about the woman. "Ah, poor Agnes," Mrs. Gable sighed, shaking her head. "Lost her husband years back. Took it hard. Real hard. Snapped something inside her, I reckon. She's mostly harmless, but floats between worlds, you know? One minute she's lucid as you or I. Next she's off in her own reality, saying the strangest things. Lives alone out past the creek." Knowing her story, Michael and Sarah felt a pang of sympathy replace their unease. Just another casualty of life's hardships in a town full of them. They mentally filed her away as eccentric but harmless. As evening approached, Michael's mother, Helen, arrived, carrying a large container warm with the smell of homemade stew. Despite the weariness lining her eyes, she smiled brightly at Michael. Seeing her navigate the dusty path to the clinic, her steps careful, filled Michael with a familiar mix of love and guilt. "Mom, I told you not to worry about bringing food," Michael said, taking the heavy container. "It's a long walk and it's getting dark." "Nonsense," Helen waved a dismissive hand, though she leaned heavily on the doorframe for a moment. "I know this route like the back of my hand. Your father and I used to come up here often, back when we volunteered, helping out where we could. This place holds memories." She glanced around, her expression softening, before noticing Sarah. "Oh, and you must be Sarah. Michael told me about you. It's good he has someone working with him." Sarah, who had been watching the exchange with a wistful expression, beamed. "It's lovely to meet you, Mrs. H. Helen. You have a very thoughtful son." Michael felt a warmth spread through him at his mother's presence, a small anchor in the strangeness of the day. "Are you on duty tonight, son?" Helen asked, turning back to Michael. "Yeah, Mom. First night shift. Sarah takes over tomorrow morning." "All right, eat up, then get your strength." They were just finishing the stew when a soft, hesitant knock echoed through the clinic. It was Agnes again. This time, she clutched the small, clumsily wrapped bundle. "A gift," she mumbled, extending it towards Michael, her eyes avoiding his. "Welcome gift." Helen stepped forward slightly, her expression tightening with concern. Agnes seemed different now, more hesitant, almost puppet-like, her gaze fixed on something over Michael's shoulder. "Agnes, dear, why don't you take some of this to home?" Helen said gently, her voice calm but firm. "Michael, pack some up for her." Michael quickly ladled some stew into a spare container. Agnes accepted it mutely, her eyes still distant, before shuffling away into the deepening twilight. Soon after, Helen and Sarah left, their footsteps fading down the path, leaving Michael utterly alone in the aging clinic. The silence pressed in, thick and watchful. He lit a citronella coil, the pungent smoke curling upwards, a flimsy defense against the swarm of insects drawn by the light from the surrounding woods. Beyond the back door lay an overgrown, abandoned plot of land, a tangle of weeds and wildflowers gone wild, humming with unseen life. It felt like the edge of the known world. He tried to read, but the words swam on the page. Fatigue pulled at him. He checked the clock. Nearly 2 a.m. Yawning, he stretched, the bones in his back popping. That's when he heard it, a distinct, slow tap, tap, tap at the front door. His heart gave a nervous jump. He peered through the grimy window beside the door. The porch light cast a weak, yellow circle, but beyond it, the darkness was absolute. He could make out a shape, hunched and indistinct, partially hidden by the overgrown bushes near the steps. A wide-brimmed hat obscured the figure's face. "Hello?" Michael called out, his voice sounding unnaturally loud in the stillness. "Who's there?" A low, shivering voice answered, barely more than a whisper carried on the night air, so cold. "Doctor." "Cold?" Michael hesitated. It was a warm, humid night. "Are you sick? Help me, it's so cold." Hesitantly, Michael unlocked and opened the door a crack. The figure shuffled forward into the weak light. It was a man, middle-aged perhaps, though it was hard to tell. He was gaunt, almost skeletal, dressed in ragged, threadbare clothes. A battered straw hat shadowed his face, but Michael could see the man trembling violently, his teeth chattering audibly. I feel terrible," the man stammered, his breath misting slightly despite the warmth. "Chilled to the bone." Okay, come inside," Michael said, concern overriding his unease. He opened the door wider and helped the shivering man stumble towards a waiting room chair. The man's skin felt unnaturally icy to the touch, even through his thin shirt. "You're freezing. Sit here. Let me get you something warm to drink. Maybe a blanket." Michael hurried to the small kitchenette area, his mind racing. Hypothermia on a night like this, strange. He filled a mug with hot water from the kettle that was still warm. When he turned back, mug in hand, the waiting room was empty. The chair where the man had sat was vacant. "Hello," Michael called out, his voice tight. "Sir," he quickly checked the examination rooms, the small storage closet, even glanced out the back door into the dark wasteland. Nothing. The man was gone, vanished without a sound. A prickle of unease traced its way up Michael's spine. He felt a sudden, irrational chill, despite the mug warming his hands. Shaking his head, telling himself the man must have just wandered off, disoriented, Michael locked the front door securely. But sleep was elusive. He spent the rest of his shift perched uneasily on a stool, jumping at every creak of the old building, watching the shadows lengthen and retreat as dawn slowly broke. He saw no sign of the shivering man. Exhausted and unsettled, he finally handed the keys over to Sarah when she arrived, mentioning nothing of the strange visitor, and headed home to catch some sleep. His sleep was short-lived. He awoke mid-morning to the sound of his mother crying out in pain. Rushing into the kitchen, he found her on the floor, clutching her leg, the overturned pot of boiling broth she'd been preparing for her small food stall spilled across the tiles, steam rising ominously. She'd slipped, she explained through gritted teeth, lost her footing, and stumbled against the hot stove before falling, the scalding liquid splashing onto her calf. Panic surged through Michael. He carefully helped her up, his medical training kicking in, but his hands trembled as he saw the angry red burn blistering her skin. He needed proper supplies. Bundling his mother carefully into his old car, he drove her straight back to the clinic, his heart pounding with worry. Sarah was there, tending to a small cut on a child's finger. Her eyes widened in alarm as Michael half-carried Helen inside. Oh my God, Helen. What happened? Together, Michael and Sarah worked gently and efficiently, cleaning and dressing the severe burn. Helen whimpered softly, trying to be brave, but tears streamed down her face. Seeing his mother in such pain, vulnerable and hurt, undid Michael completely. He sank onto a nearby stool, burying his face in his hands, silent sobs shaking his shoulders. He felt utterly helpless. Hey, Sarah said softly, placing a comforting hand on his back after they had finished bandaging Helen's leg and settled her onto an examination cot. It's okay. It's a bad burn, but she'll heal. You did everything right. She needs you to be strong now. Michael nodded, wiping his eyes, grateful for Sarah's steady presence. Just as the immediate crisis subsided, the front door creaked open again. It was Agnes. This time, she clutched her head, her face contorted in apparent agony. Help me, she moaned, staggering towards them. My head, splitting, hurts. Hurts so bad. Can't stand it, okay, Agnes. Sit down, Michael said, forcing himself back into professional mode, reaching for the small cabinet where they kept painkillers. Let me get you something for the pain. Wait. Agnes suddenly froze, her hand hovering near her temple. Her eyes darted around the room, lingering for a moment on Helen lying on the cot, then flicking back to Michael. A strange look, almost like dawning awareness mixed with fear, crossed her face. No, never mind. And just like that, she turned and fled, leaving Michael and Sarah staring after her, utterly perplexed by her erratic behavior. What is with her? Sarah muttered, shaking her head. That evening, it was Sarah's turn for the night shift. Before leaving to care for his mother, Michael pulled her aside. Listen, Sarah, he said, lowering his voice. Be careful tonight. I had a weird visitor last night. An old guy, freezing cold, just vanished. I don't know what's going on, but this place feels off. Keep the doors locked. Sarah looked concerned but nodded. Will do. Don't worry about me. Go take care of Helen. Michael drove home, his mind a whirl of anxiety for his mother's burn, for Sarah alone at the clinic, for the unsettling events he couldn't explain. Sleep was impossible that night. Helen's pain kept her restless, and every creak of his own house seemed amplified, echoing the eerie sounds of the clinic. He arrived back at the clinic promptly at 8 a.m., bleary-eyed from lack of sleep. The sight that greeted him sent a jolt of adrenaline through his exhausted body. The waiting room was a disaster zone. Chairs were overturned, papers scattered everywhere, drawers pulled open, their contents spilled onto the floor. And huddled beneath the reception desk, fast asleep, was Sarah. Sarah, wake up!" Michael rushed over, shaking her gently. She stirred, groaning, her eyes fluttering open blearily. "Michael, wow, what happened?" She sat up, looking around the wrecked room in confusion. I don't remember." "What do you mean you don't remember?" Michael asked urgently. "Did someone break in?" Sarah rubbed her temples, her brow furrowed in concentration. I heard a noise last night, like someone banging on the back door. I went to look, opened it just a crack, and then everything went fuzzy like smelling salts, but stronger. My head started spinning. I felt dizzy. I think I just passed out right there." She looked down at her hands, then back at the mess. "I must have slept through this." They quickly checked the small lockbox where they kept the petty cash and the locked cabinet with the few prescription medications. Miraculously, nothing seemed to be missing. Robbery didn't seem to be the motive. "Maybe it was Agnes," Sarah suggested hesitantly. "Maybe she came back, looking for drugs or something." As if summoned by her name, Agnes appeared at the doorway yet again. This time, she wasn't asking for help or offering strange gifts. She held a fistful of what looked like yellowed paper, thin, flimsy sheets printed with strange symbols. Wordlessly, she began walking around the perimeter of the clinic, dropping handfuls of the paper onto the ground, scattering them across the dusty porch and the small patch of grass near the entrance. "Agnes, stop. What are you doing?" Michael shouted, running outside with Sarah close behind. "You can't do that. Get out of here." Agnes ignored them, continuing her bizarre ritual, her expression blank, focused intently on her task. They tried to steer her away, but she was surprisingly strong, shrugging off their hands until she had scattered all the paper. Then, abruptly, she stopped, looked back at the clinic with an unreadable expression, and walked away down the path. Michael sighed in frustration, bending down to pick up some of the strange paper. It felt brittle, cheap. What even is this stuff? "Looks like fake money," Sarah said, examining a sheet. "Like offering money for spirits in many Asian cultures, similar paper money, known as joss paper or spirit money, was burned for ancestors or ghosts in the afterlife." Seeing it scattered around the clinic like litter was deeply unsettling. They spent the next hour meticulously gathering every last piece of the symbolic money, stuffing it into a large trash can inside the clinic. "We can't have this lying around," Michael said grimly. "It looks like some kind of curse. No one will come near the place." As evening approached again, it was technically Michael's shift. He sat alone at the reception desk, the silence amplifying his growing sense of dread. The events of the past 2 days felt increasingly sinister. He found himself glancing nervously towards the windows, the locked doors. He dozed off fitfully, head resting on his arms, only to be jolted awake by an icy touch on his hand. He gasped, snatching his hand back. Standing just outside the window, peering in, was the shivering man from the first night. His face was clearer now in the dim light filtering from inside. Hollow cheeks, eyes like dark pits, skin pale and clammy looking. "Please," the man rasped, his voice a chilling whisper that seemed to claw at the glass. "Money, need money." Michael's heart hammered against his ribs. Remembering Anna's strange behavior and feeling a desperate urge to appease whatever this was, he fumbled for his wallet, pulling out a $20 bill. "Here," he said, his voice trembling as he held it towards the window. "Take this." The man recoiled slightly, shaking his head, a look of desperate frustration on his spectral face. "No, not that kind." He raised a trembling, translucent finger and pointed towards the corner of the room. Need that money, please." Michael followed the pointing finger. It was aimed directly at the trash can, overflowing with the yellow spirit money Agnes had scattered earlier. A cold dread washed over Michael. He slowly turned back to the window, but the man was gone, vanished into the night once more. Suddenly, the window he'd been looking through flew open with violent force, slamming against the exterior wall. An icy gust of wind ripped through the room, smelling of damp earth and decay. Papers flew off the desk, charts fluttered to the floor, and the spirit money in the trash can erupted upwards, swirling around the room like a blizzard of ghostly currency. The temperature plummeted. Michael cried out in alarm, scrambling to slam the window shut and latch it against the unnatural gale. As soon as the window was secured, the wind died instantly. The papers and spirit money drifted slowly back to the floor, settling in a chaotic mess. The room was deathly still again, but the air crackled with a residual energy, cold and menacing. Michael backed away, grabbing the heavy wooden leg of a broken stool he'd noticed earlier, clutching it like a club. He retreated to the furthest corner of the room, away from the doors and windows, and sank to the floor, pulling his knees to his chest. He sat there, wide-eyed and trembling, weapon gripped tight, watching the shadows dance until the first gray light of dawn crept through the windows. Sleep was unthinkable. Sarah arrived to find him pale and haggard, dark circles under his eyes, still clutching the makeshift weapon. The room was littered with the eerie yellow paper. "Michael, what happened?" she exclaimed, rushing to his side. He recounted the chilling encounter with the ghostly man, the sudden wind, the swirling spirit money. "It's not Agnes, Sarah," he said, his voice hoarse. "It's something else. Something not human. I think someone or something is trying to drive us out of here. Maybe they want to rob the place when it's empty. We need to be prepared." He didn't voice his deeper fear that it wasn't robbery they were dealing with, but something far worse. Sarah looked frightened but resolute. Okay. What do we do?" Their planning session was interrupted by the now dreaded appearance of Agnes. This time, she didn't speak. She approached the clinic slowly, her hands coated in something black and greasy. Without a word, She began smearing the black substance onto the window panes and the door frames, her movements deliberate, ritualistic. "Agnes, no, stop it!" Sarah cried, running out to intercept her. Agnes turned, her eyes vacant, and smeared a thick black streak across Sarah's cheek before Sarah could react. Then, her task seemingly complete, Agnes turned and shuffled away quickly. "What the hell was that?" Sarah spluttered, wiping frantically at her face. Michael cautiously inspected the black streaks on the window. It smelled faintly burnt. "It looks like soot," he said slowly. "From the bottom of a cooking pot, maybe, or chimney ash." It was another strange, seemingly nonsensical act, yet performed with such intention. Sarah scrubbed her face clean, then grimly started washing the black smudges off the clinic's entrances, her earlier optimism visibly fading, replaced by a growing fear that mirrored Michael's own. Seeing Sarah's distress and terrified at the thought of her facing whatever lurked there alone, Michael made a decision. "I'm staying tonight," he announced. "With you. We faced this together." He quickly drove home to check on his mother, grab a quick shower, and tell Helen he'd be working late again, trying to mask his anxiety. He returned to the clinic as dusk settled, finding Sarah finishing her cleaning, the air still thick with tension. They locked the doors, checked the windows, and settled in for a long night. Michael kept the wooden stool leg close in hand. Sarah gripped a heavy metal bedpan. They didn't talk much, sitting in the dim light of the waiting room, straining their ears for any unusual sound. Outside, a full moon hung in the sky, bathing the overgrown yard in an ethereal silvery light. The silence stretched, taut and expectant. Around midnight it came. Not a soft tap this time, but a violent bang. 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 On the front door, strong enough to make the flimsy wood rattle in its frame. Michael jumped to his feet, heart pounding, gripping his makeshift club. Sarah scrambled up beside him, eyes wide with fear. "Who's there?" Michael called out, trying to keep his voice steady. Silence. The banging stopped. They waited, hardly daring to breathe. Exchanging a nervous glance, they crept towards the door, peering cautiously through the small window beside it. The moonlit porch was empty. Then a sound drifted from inside the clinic, a soft, choked sobbing. It seemed to be coming from the main examination room. Weapons raised, they slowly pushed open the door. The sobbing grew louder. It was coming from behind the examination table. Michael signaled for Sarah to stay back, then edged around the table. His blood ran cold. Crouched on the floor, huddled against the wall, was Sarah. Her body shook with violent sobs, her face buried in her hands. "Sarah?" Michael whispered, confused. "What are you doing? How did you?" He reached out to touch her shoulder. Her head snapped up, but the face that looked back at him wasn't Sarah's. Her eyes were wild, filled with an alien terror and malice, her features twisted into a grotesque mask of suffering. Her voice, when she spoke, was a low, guttural moan that didn't sound remotely like her. Cold, so cold, the voice rasped, emanating from Sarah's lips. "Help me! Let me in, Sarah! Snap out of it!" Michael yelled, grabbing her arms, trying to shake her. It was like trying to move solid rock. An unnatural strength flowed through her small frame, easily resisting his efforts. This wasn't Sarah. Something else was looking out through her eyes, wearing her body like a suit. Suddenly, the clinic's front door burst open. Standing there, framed against the moonlight, were Michael's mother, Helen, leaning heavily on a makeshift crutch, and Agnes, looking strangely lucid and determined. In Helen's hand was a long, thorny branch, stripped of its leaves, a mulberry branch Michael recognized vaguely, remembering old folk tales about its power to ward off evil. Get away from her, foul spirit. Helen cried, her voice ringing with unexpected authority despite her injury. She hobbled forward and struck Sarah's possessed form sharply across the shoulders with the thorny branch. Sarah, or the thing inside her, let out an unearthly shriek of agony and rage, doubling over as if struck by lightning. Helen struck again, chanting words Michael couldn't understand, her face set with fierce determination. Agnes rushed forward, pulling a length of rope from her pocket. "Tie her," Agnes urged Michael, her voice clear and urgent. "Quickly, before it recovers." Snapping out of his shock, Michael helped Agnes secure Sarah's wrists and ankles with the rope as the entity within her seemed to momentarily weaken, her body slumping against the wall, silent but still radiating a palpable malevolence. "Mom, Agnes, how did you know?" Michael gasped, breathless. "Agnes came and got me," Helen explained, leaning against the doorframe, breathing heavily. "Banging on my door, frantic, saying you were both in terrible danger, that he was here, despite my leg. I had to come." She gestured towards the bound figure of Sarah. "She's possessed, Michael." "By a ghost? A ghost? Why Sarah?" "Because she was vulnerable," Agnes spoke, her earlier madness completely gone, replaced by a heavy sadness and fear. Years ago, Helen and Michael's father, David, had been known in the community for their quiet charity. They occasionally donated funds to the clinic, specifically earmarked to help destitute families afford a simple coffin and burial, ensuring a measure of dignity in death. Arthur, Agnes admitted sadly, had been poor, but largely through his own doing, drinking, gambling, unwilling to work steadily. Few people pitied him. As liver disease ravaged his body in his final days, his greatest fear became dying without a proper burial. He became obsessed with securing one of the charity coffins he knew the clinic sometimes provided through the donations of Michael's parents. He'd even threatened the clinic staff, swearing he'd haunt the place if he wasn't given one. Frightened, they'd assured him they would arrange it when the time came. When Arthur was clearly on his deathbed, Agnes went to the clinic to claim the promised coffin. But fate intervened. There were no coffins available at that specific moment, the fund perhaps temporarily depleted or the supply exhausted. However, the clinic staff, pitying her situation, offered her a sum of money instead, intended to help with funeral expenses. Returning to her dying husband, Agnes couldn't bring herself to tell him the truth. She feared the knowledge would prevent him from dying peacefully. Instead, she lied. She told Arthur that the benefactors, Michael's parents, had specifically refused to grant him a coffin. Overwhelmed by her own impending grief and poverty, she rationalized that the money was more useful for her, the living survivor than a wooden box for the dead. Arthur, hearing her lie, died moments later, his heart filled with bitter resentment towards the couple he believed had denied him his final wish. His spirit, anchored by this burning injustice, never left. He became tethered to the clinic, a place of sickness and transition, his anger festering. He waited, a cold knot of vengeance, for the family of his perceived betrayers to return. Michael's father passed away, and Helen stopped visiting the clinic, focusing on raising Michael. Years passed. Then fate, or something darker, brought Michael, the son of the man Arthur wrongly blamed, back to the very place the ghost considered his domain. Agnes herself had been tormented ever since. Her guilt manifested as the madness that plagued her. She saw Arthur's ghost frequently, lurking around the clinic grounds, a miserable, chilling presence. She knew he was the reason no one could work there for long, why the place felt cursed. In her lucid moments, she begged him to move on, but he refused, obsessed with revenge against Michael's family. Terrified he would harm her or drag her down with him if she revealed her lie, she had instead sought out old folk remedies: the mulberry branch to repel spirits, the soot or ash, a byproduct of fire, believed to hold protective power against the cold entities of the spirit world, to create barriers. The spirit money is a desperate, confused offering. Tonight, sensing the culmination of Arthur's rage, she knew she had to bring Helen, to force a confrontation, to finally reveal the truth and hope it could break the cycle. Tears streamed down on Mrs. face as she finished her confession. Helen looked at the bound form of Sarah, her expression filled with pity and sorrow. "Arthur," Helen said, her voice clear and steady, addressing the spirit within Sarah. "It was a lie. My husband and I never denied you anything. We never even knew of your request. Your wife, she misspoke out of fear and grief. It's over now. Let go of the anger. Please, find your peace. Don't torment the living any longer." Agnes fell to her knees beside Sarah. "He's right, Arthur. It was my fault, all my fault. I lied to you. Please, forgive me. Go to the light. Be free," she sobbed. As Agnes pleaded, her eyes suddenly widened, staring intently towards the open doorway. "They're here," she whispered, her voice filled with awe and terror. "Two of them, figures, one in white, one in black. Oh, Arthur, they're taking him. He's fighting, screaming, but they're dragging him away." She described the scene invisible to Michael and Helen, her husband's spectral form writhing in protest, being pulled inexorably into the darkness by two imposing, otherworldly figures. Then, abruptly, Sarah's body went limp. The tension drained out of her. Her eyes fluttered closed, then opened again slowly. She looked around the room, at Michael, Helen, and the kneeling Agnes, her expression bewildered, confused, with no memory of the preceding horror. What happened?" she murmured, her voice weak but blessedly her own again. In the aftermath, a profound calm settled over the old clinic. The oppressive chill lifted, replaced by the ordinary sounds of the early morning: birdsong, the distant rumble of a tractor. Helen's burn began to heal cleanly, faster than expected. Michael and Sarah continued their work, and slowly, cautiously, The atmosphere of the place transformed. It still felt old, but no longer menacing. As for Agnes, the hauntings didn't completely restore her fractured mind, but the constant torment ceased. Seeking solace, Michael helped her find refuge at a quiet Buddhist temple in a neighboring town. There, surrounded by peace and chanting, she found a measure of calm she hadn't known in years. She seemed more grounded, the frantic energy replaced by a quiet acceptance. Before Michael left her there, she pressed a string of smooth wooden prayer beads into his hand. For protection, she whispered, her eyes clearer than he'd ever seen them. And for strength, you'll need it. Michael wore the beads, a tangible reminder of the ordeal. He and Sarah worked side by side, and gradually, the townspeople began to return to the clinic. Perhaps they sensed a change, the lifting of the unseen weight. Or perhaps it was simply Michael and Sarah's steady dedication. Patients came more frequently, their trust slowly rebuilding. Michael no longer resented his assignment. The city lights seemed distant and unimportant now. Working in the quiet, rural clinic, tending to the simple needs of the community, mending bodies and sometimes, in small ways, mending spirits, he found a purpose he hadn't known he was looking for. The clinic, once a symbol of decay and dread, became a place of tentative hope. Yet, sometimes, late at night, when the wind sighed through the trees outside, Michael would feel a phantom chill, touch the prayer beads at his wrist, and remember the cold, desperate ghost born of a lie. A chilling reminder of how thin the veil between worlds could be, and how deeply the forgotten could wound the living. The silence in the old clinic is different now, perhaps calmer, but the memory of that chilling presence lingers, a reminder of how thin the veil can be. Thank you for listening to tonight's story on Sleepy Horror Tales. We hope it brought a satisfying chill to your evening. If you enjoyed venturing into the forgotten with us, please consider leaving a like, sharing your thoughts in the comments, and subscribing for more tales from the shadows. Until our next story, sleep tight.
Is it the wind or a ghost?